Those Days with the Monsters, Part 19. Kirrel's head buzzed and his lungs burned. For some odd reason his arm was throbbing too. Voices floated in and out above him, sometimes calm, sometimes stressed. And a few times he heard what sounded like the captain's voice, and each time it sounded angrier. Finally, after what felt like ages, he was able to make out the words. Nothing. Still nothing. Not a single word. No data, no contact, not even acknowledging that he's on the ship, or that they put him here. I'm telling you, Doc, I'm this close to sending them a little present from Dopey. Do not execute an information attack on Kirrel's bosses. We want them to work with us, remember? Doc paused, then sighed, the stress in his voice evident. Look, I'm pissed off too. It's their damn fault he's in this situation, and they won't even help us protect him. But he needs calm and quiet if we're going to avoid damage. Look at him. His frills are bright red. Don't scare my patient, Jake, please. The captain sighed. Right. And I guess if we want to work with them on the Tizzix thing, we do need them to be at least slightly willing to cooperate. But still, well... He sighed again, and there was a sound of shifting and tapping footsteps. Doesn't even make any sense they wouldn't give us anything on his biology. Unless... He said they were insular. Kirrel's frills perked up. That was Sleepy's slow voice. Maybe they just don't have the information you need. It'd explain why they don't want to tell you anything. Hard to admit you don't have biology of a species that you have to be responsible for after all. That doesn't even make sense. No biological data at all? They'd have to have some. They knew we could breathe oxygen, so... Doc groaned, and there came a sound as if he had violently flopped into his chair. Doc, you okay? The captain asked softly. I'm trying to fight a bug we didn't even have 5 days ago. I have to make all his IVs from scratch because his iron balance is off. I almost killed him by getting his selenium wrong. This thing doesn't respond to Vanc or macrolides or carbapenems. Most of our beta-lactams are fatal to him. I don't even know how to give him maintenance fluid properly. Damn it, Jake, I haven't slept in 2 days, if that. If this doesn't work, I got nothing left to try. Doc's breath shuddered, and then the sound he had made earlier with his nose in the fibrous sheet rang in the room. Kirrel felt his frills go red in surprise. Hey look, Doc. He heard you. Kirrel could feel a hand gently settle over the base of his first frill. A head pat. Then the footsteps that had approached must be Sleepy's. If nothing else, he can hear you, and you can startle him. That's good, right? Kirrel pried one eyelid open. He still couldn't see much, because his second eyelid was closed, but he could see a faint glow. Doc! Doc! Sleepy's voice was suddenly agitated. His hand shook. I'm coming, Oh, okay, calm down. There's a lot we don't know. Don't get riled up one way or the other just yet. Somehow, in spite of telling Sleepy to calm down, Doc's voice sounded more agitated than Sleepy's. Kirrel groaned and tried to open his second eyelid. He managed to get it slightly open, and a few fleshy blobs swam into view in front of the lights. Faces. Kirrel, can you see me? After a minute, he gathered enough strength to move his head very, very slightly. A nod. Holy sh! You scare me, spaceman. Sleepy was still patting Kirrel's head. Kirrel found himself too tired to be embarrassed about it. Don't you do that again, okay? If you aren't feeling good, tell us. Kirrel wanted to object, but he didn't have the strength. His frills, orange with indignation, were likely communicative enough. Hey Sleepy, let's discuss this with him later, Don't upset my patient. As Kirrel blinked weakly, his eyelids opened wider. He could see Doc staring at a holopad readout full of terms Kirrel couldn't understand. He's not out of the woods yet. The captain's hand smacked into Doc's shoulder with impressive force. Doc jumped slightly. Maybe not. But come on, Doc. You brought a completely unfamiliar species back out of septic shock. At least make sure you're giving yourself enough credit, right? After a moment, Doc nodded. Is everyone else in the crew past the 3-day mark? The last batch to be treated is still shedding. Right. Then he can't have any visitors until they're done. It'll be you and Bashful keeping an eye on him, right? The captain asked softly. Yeah, sounds good. Doc sighed and rubbed his eyes. The circles under them were deep and dark. I'll just run the basic checks on him and then I guess I'll let Bashful take over. Not exactly at your best, are you? Sleepy murmured softly. Fine. We'll leave it at that for now. Get some sleep, Doc. You did good. Thanks for taking care of my boy. As Doc checked Kirrel's pupils, listened to his heart rate, and checked his blood, Kirrel found himself drifting off back to sleep, more warm and comfortable than he had been in a while. Things seemed to be a cold, painful haze after the confrontation with the Khuman carpenter, but it wasn't cold now. It was nice and warm, and he floated away, clinging happily to the last words he'd heard. My boy. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Those Days with the Monsters. Read by a Good Bean.